Hello and welcome to my second dev blog. Within this installment, I'll be going over a much more in-depth audio visualizer. For this one, I'm creating more of a wave sort of effect. Hopefully with this, it'll be much more recognizable, much more easier to visualize the actual audio compared to the last effect. So here I'm just laying down the framework for the effect. I'm using a mesh renderer rather than a actual particle renderer, like in my last dev blog. This way it creates individual squares rather than sort of individual particles. With these squares, as a collective, they make a sort of breathing kind of feel to it, and when combined with the turbulence effects, which I'll be using later, it makes the audio visualization much more crisp, much more crisp, and it made a result that I was very happy with in the end. At this stage, I almost had the basis of this effect, the sort of framework of it completed, but I was running into this constant issue of having the particles, the sprites of each square being too small for the effect, and this caused the effect to be much more of a finite mist, more of a sort of fog effect rather than a much more unified wave, is probably the best way to describe it. So yeah, I had to go into Blender, resize the squares, take it out of Blender, put it into Unreal, and then retie the sprite to the new resized square, which did fix the issue. And yeah, it fixed it nicely because then I had a much more unified effect. So at this point I was happy with the size of the cubes, and it made the swarm effect, the mist effect, the wave effect, it made it look much more whole, like it was one breathing entity rather than a sort of fine mist. So now here I'm just making some final tweaks to the emitter, and until I'm happy with how it moves within the space. At this point, I was very happy with the way the effect was looking. I managed to use the box node to confine the starting particles within a box, and by doing so, it sort of has a mass to it in the middle of the swarm. So then that way, when the turbulence effect is used, it has a much more fluid feel to it, as if it's sort of breathing, as if it's sort of alive, and as the turbulence gets more intense and less intense, it gives it a sort of tendril look to it as well. So yeah, at this point I was very happy. Now that the basis of the effect is complete, there's one more step before I move on to the audio visualizer. Here I was providing the effect with some color. I used a two-tone color shift. This way it'd give the effect some more depth rather than some gray squares. That way the blue and the pink would contrast with each other, making it easier to differentiate what was closer and further away. So I'm just going to go over this section here. At this point, this is where I made the part that is basically responsible for the movement within the audio visualizer. To do this, I used the audio spectrum, as with the last effect as well. The value that from the audio spectrum I multiplied with the value of the position, so X, Y, or Z, each individually. So I multiplied those two together, and then at first I put it through straight to the output. But then I noticed that the movement wasn't strong enough, so I added the make float node at the bottom, and just so that the result from the multiplier, each result would add one value to it, so then that way when it got put back into a X, Y, or Z value, it'd be a little bit more stronger since it had one more value added onto it than prior. So now that I had all other aspects of the experiment completed, it was time to put the effect into the viewport and then give it some audio to actually react to. And then yeah, that's pretty much it. The effect is finished and I'm very much happy with how it turned out. I think it's a great upgrade from the first dev blog, and it really opened my eyes up to what Unreal is really capable of in terms of the Niagara systems. However, I did find it a bit of a struggle to work with from a standpoint of somebody that's a little bit less competent with the software, especially when compared to something like Blender. But yeah, I'm very much happy with how it all turned out, and this is the finished effect. Yeah.